Hello, my name is Jim McGillivray and this is the Pipe Box, your source for all things piping. If you find this video useful, please give it a like and please subscribe to this YouTube channel to see more videos like this. We're going to go over a tune today, and you can print the music out to this tune by going back to the description of this video on my YouTube channel. You'll see a link to a PDF there. Today I would like to do with you a lovely old slow air called Morag of Dunvegan. It's a very easy tune. In fact, it was the second tune that I ever learned as an advanced beginner. So if you are an advanced beginner or an intermediate player, this will be an excellent tune for you. Morag is generally a woman's name in Scotland. Dunvegan is a small town on the northwest corner of the Isle of Skye on the west coast of Scotland. It's perhaps most famous for its association with Dunvegan Castle, a 14th century castle that became and remains the seat of the MacLeod family in Scotland. Dunvegan has a particularly significant history for pipers because this was the home of the MacCrimmon piping dynasty. The MacCrimmons taught piping out of Piobaireachd, just near Dunvegan, from mid-1500s until the late 1700s. This was where the clan chiefs in Scotland sent their pipers for training. The MacCrimmons were renowned throughout Scotland as the greatest pipers and the greatest teachers of piping, and Dunvegan and the surrounding area was their home. Today a large cairn marks the spot at Piobaireachd where the MacCrimmon dynasty lived. Who Morag was, we don't know. We usually refer to the tune as traditional, meaning we don't know who wrote it. However, there is some evidence that it was written by a Neil Matheson. What instrument he wrote it on, I don't know. It almost certainly wasn't the pipes. He may have been a vocalist, he may have been a fiddler. Whatever its history, it's a beautiful and well-known melody. There were words written to it in the mid-1900s by Catherine Douglas with a shout-out to the pipes in the third verse. When fired by the humming drones comes magic of chanter tones, love throbs in my very bones for my darling Morag. Let's begin by hearing the whole of Morag of Dunvegan played on a Blair digital chanter. That was Morag of Dunvegan played on a Blair digital chanter. Let's have a quick look at the whole score. The tune is written in 6/8 time, which gives it the feeling of a waltz, so it has quite a cheerful demeanor. You could use a more up-tempo version to play a bride down the aisle. You could use a slower rendition at a funeral. As you can see, it's not a technically heavy tune, though you need to be able to play a grip, a burl, and doublings on high A, F, E, C, and B. Lots of doublings. I want to focus on one thing today, and that is making sure your technique falls where it should relative to the beat in the tune. So here I've circled in red the first grace note in every doubling. The reason I've done this is that we want to make sure when we hit that doubling that we put the first grace note on the beat. If we don't, our tune will be bent slightly out of shape. In green, you'll see I've circled some grips and burls. They take a different view of the beat, and we'll talk about this as we get into the tune. Okay, let's delve in and look at the first part, specifically the first 2 bars in the first part. You'll see that I've circled the G grace note in the 2 C doublings in the first 2 bars. Those who have read my rhythmic finger work technical tutor know that I'm a real stickler for making sure that we play the first grace note in a doubling on the beat, not the second grace note. So when we play a C doubling on the beat, we play not. So when your G finger hits the chanter to play the G grace note, your foot hits the floor. The D grace note in the C doubling comes after your foot hits the floor. Avoid at all costs playing the second grace note on the beat. This is a very common tendency among pipers to push the doublings a little bit ahead of the beat so that the second grace note instead of the first grace note is on the beat. Very important, and I dwell on this at great length in my rhythmic fingerwork tutor. So in bar 1 and 2, we have 2 C doublings. They should be played like this. You can hear the G grace note coming on the beat. Very important. In bar 3, we have a high A doubling, and in bar 4, we have an F half doubling. A half doubling, of course, is just a doubling lacking the first G grace note. In both cases, the high A doubling and the F half doubling, the beat is going to fall on the first grace note in the movement. This pattern continues all the way through the tune, whether it's a high A doubling, C doubling, B doubling, F doubling, always put the first grace note on the beat. Let's look at bars 7 and 8 at the end of the part. Again, a half doubling on F, and in the last bar, a B doubling. Get the correct grace note on the beat. Let's go back to bar 1 again. We see a grip on C. Grips are a little different from doublings. When I teach a grip, and when I teach a grip slowly, I teach that the grip ends on the beat. In other words, it's not the first grace note that's on the beat now, it's the theme note. So the grip ends on the beat. Now that doesn't mean when you play a grip, you put this big fat grip ahead of the beat. You still want to be pretty close to having the first low G on the beat, but not quite. So the first bar sounds like this. A nice rippling grip, and then wait for the C doubling for the beat. Okay? So if you play the first 2 bars out of skew and don't put the doublings on the beat, you end up with something that sounds like this. As opposed to rhythmically, these are the things you're shooting for in the first part. Musically, it's pretty simple. You're going to take any left foot beat, in other words, the first beat in each bar, and if it's a long note, you're going to really hold it out. Ho-da, ho-dum, bum, ho-dee-dee, bree-dee-um, bree-dee-dee-bree, ho-bro, ho-dum-bo, hee-dum-bo, hee-up-bum-bo-da-bo-bo. Okay, that's what's important in the first part. Let's hear the whole first part played on a practice chant. In the second part, the rule about doublings still applies. If you're unsure about whether you're putting your doublings on the beat or not, or if you would like to practice learning how to put your doublings on the beat, try this little experiment. Let's look in part 2 at bars 3 and 4. We have a C doubling in bar 3, and we have an F doubling in bar 4. Try these two bars just playing a G grace note instead of a doubling and putting the G grace note squarely on the beat. Then put the doubling in. Make sure you're playing the G grace note in the same spot both times. I often see pipers who will play the plain G grace note perfectly on the beat, and then when they try to play the second grace note and play the full doubling, they put the first grace note ahead of the beat and they put the second grace note on the beat. Practice just playing one grace note and then put the doubling in and make sure the G grace note is still on the beat. At the end of bar 2, we see a burl. The same rule applies for the burl. The first low G hit will be on the beat, not the last low G hit. Not. Wait for it. And again, in the second part, musically, really push out the long note at the first of every bar. In other words, the left foot in this tune, really push out those long notes. Bree, bree, umpy, ho, bro, ho, dum, bee, dum, bo, bree, dee, umpy, ho, bro, ha, bra, hee, ya, ho, bo. Let's hear the whole second part played on the practice chanter. You may have heard that there was a metronome going in the background as I played that part. I'm a big fan of the metronome. I like to play to the metronome, but I really like to sing to the metronome. I find if I really want to bring the rhythm and tempo of a tune into my musical brain, the metronome is the way to do it, and singing to it. This means my brain takes charge of the tune rather than my fingers taking charge of the tune. The fingers really aren't qualified to take charge of the tune. Get your brain in it. Sing to the metronome. You can play to the metronome, although that takes a little bit of practice and it's a bit uncomfortable and awkward first time you do it. But the metronome can be one of your most valuable tools in terms of bringing out rhythm in our music. I like to sing to the metronome. I'm going to sing the second part of Morag of Dunvegan to the metronome at 144 beats per minute. Why 144? Well, there are two main beats in each bar of 6/8. In Morag of Dunvegan, we hear ho bro ha bum ba 1 and 2. However, it's 6/8 time, which means there are 6 eighth notes in each bar. Ho bro ho da dum ho dee bee bee bee. Note changes happen on one of those little beats, and if we can sing to the metronome, we can make those note changes hit the beat exactly where we want to. Bree bree bee ho bro ha bro hum bo dee da bro he bree he ho bro he bra he ho bo. We can hear exactly where each and every E strike hits the beat in that tune when we're using the metronome. This is a great tune, as I mentioned, for all levels: advanced, intermediates, beginners, advanced players. It's just a great all-around tune. Be a great tune for a lower grade competing pipe band or a community pipe band. And if you go on to pipetunes.ca, you will find a harmony to this tune there. Good luck with Morag of Dunvegan. And if you ever get a chance to go to Dunvegan Castle, take it. You won't be disappointed. From me, Jim McGillivray at the Pipe Box for this week, good piping.